take the top one.
I wasn't gonna, I was gonna hold on to it.
Okay, take that back.
The mics are both going up in front. Hello there.
I get to sit here and
I was going to say, I have USAA insurance, and if anybody who uses USAA.
All right, testing, testing, 1, 2. You guys in the back of the room, can you hear this okay? Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, we'll try. They say this is the best mic, so we'll get.
Tommy, did you go to the golf building?
No, I never got to do that. That was something you did on the skiing getaway.
So you get these things. Right there, right up this interstate without rain. The only thing about this one is it's a Pennsylvania area.
I'm going in alphabetical order. J, P, no, LP. For the candidates. All right, I think, yes, it's 7 o'clock by Verizon Standard Time, so there we go. Welcome, everybody, to the end of March board report following our board meeting this last Wednesday. So first of all, I want to tell you, I'm glad I could be here tonight. I was a little anxious. I had to take a quick trip to Montana to attend a funeral. It only took us an hour to go through the walkways here at MSP. We got out there 10 after 5 in the morning, and I waited in a line for an hour. But we made it, which is not bad. Now, if you want to get on the system quick, you go to Great Falls, Montana. There were more TSA agents than there were passengers. They even checked my shoes. They singled me out. They must have thought I looked pretty sinister. So, that's right. But anyway, here's what I was worried about. I used to do this all the time in my job at the seminary. I traveled all over. I had to get through the Denver airport, and it has 3 long or 4 gizmos, and you got to go on the underground train. And I kept thinking, man, am I going to do this? I was good. I wandered through there, watched the signage, and I felt pretty good traversing that myself after I said I could get back in the swing of things, going to hotels and getting rental cars. What a pain. I don't want to do that much longer anymore, I'll tell you that. So I'm just glad to be back tonight, and I told my colleagues if I didn't, they could take over, but I'll give it a shot here tonight for where we're at. Thank you, everybody, for all the good stuff that's been going on in the community. It's just like I say every time, it's good to listen, to watch, to see the things that happen. Most of the stuff happens behind the scenes. What you see out front, a lot of it is planned, but I think all the good work that goes on behind the scenes just say what it means to live communally and do good stuff in this co-op. I want to give a shout out to Ruthie here today. We had her grandson had a little concert down in the social room, and he played the concertina. And I want to tell you, I heard a lot of you singing there. I heard you singing those German polkas and all that other stuff. And I said, where are you at the 7,500 York Choir? Let's get with it. But it was really fun, and it was a model for what to do. If you have a family member, we didn't have to schedule it through the administration here, because any of us can reserve the social room and put a program on. And that was just a great idea. So I thank you guys for that. You did a great job and gave us all a great model for how we can present things that are of interest. And you saw we had a great crowd down there today, and people enjoyed themselves, and they had a good time. I called it the concert in 3/4 time, and it was just great. It was wonderful, And it was a young guy. He's senior at Edina High School. Or senior, was 17-year-old, junior maybe even?
17, a junior.
He's a junior, and it's terrific on the concertina. So just a model for how we can do stuff in the community. I appreciate that so very much. So what we're going to do tonight, the first thing is probably the most important thing we're going to do tonight, is because one of the key things the the bylaws give to the members is the duty and the responsibility of electing men and women from the community to serve as members of the board of directors. This is an important decision matter, election thing. It's important to choose and welcome good people into that leadership role, and that's one of the most important things that we do. So tonight, we're going to have in April a meeting like we've done in years past, where we have a dais up here and we ask questions of everybody. But tonight, instead of putting them on the TV, the morning announcement show, we decided to have them do this tonight and to introduce themselves. Some of you have known these folks a long time. Some of you don't know. You're new to the community and you don't know them. So I will introduce the candidates. Now, here's the unfortunate part. We had hoped to have a number of candidates, and we were very open to have that. We had 4 candidates willing to offer themselves to run, and unfortunately, the 4th candidate had to drop out of the race. So what there are 3 positions, and there are 3 candidates. Now, the first thing people say, well, Rich, why would we want to vote? Well, we vote because it is the main way we get the quorum counted for the annual meeting on the first Monday of May. So it is imperative that in the next, Madam Chair, I think we're going to get the ballots out this week. Where is she? I saw her earlier. There she is. They're coming out this week. We're in next week. When they come out, get them filled out as quickly as possible and return them. The nominating committee has done a good job, and we need to follow up and be sure as many people vote as possible. Okay? Everybody understand that? That's terribly important. So I want to introduce the 3 folks who are offered themselves to be members of the board of directors. And we'll go by alphabetical order. And the first candidate to introduce himself will be Roger Johnson. So Roger, I'll give you the mic here, and come on to the podium and make yourself, give him a hand.
Thank you, Rich. Well, it's good to see all of you here tonight. My name is Roger Johnson, in case you haven't met me before. I once, out of curiosity, looked in the Minneapolis phone book, and I counted the Roger Johnsons that I could find. But when I got up to 300, I quit. I just got bored with the activity. But chances are you probably know at least one Roger Johnson in your life. Well, here's another one. So I have lived on the 8th floor here at 7500 York Cooperative since the week before Christmas of 2021. I do not recommend moving the week before Christmas if you want to enjoy Christmas, but I managed to get through it. I have lived in Minnesota most of my life, except for a short stint in South Dakota running a U.S. Senate campaign. That was interesting. I'm half Norwegian and half Swedish, so I have a little rivalry going on in my brain constantly that I put up with. So I have found that my working career experiences have prepared me well for serving on the board here at 7500 York. I worked in the insurance industry, both in sales and in claims, for a number of years. I spent 10 years working in politics and government. I worked for Al Quie, who was a congressman in Minnesota's 1st District before he became governor. I worked for him for 7 years while he was in Congress. Had a lot of very interesting experiences during those 7 years. 14 years of my career included working in management with the Minnesota Medical Association, which is the professional organization for doctors in Minnesota. And then I spent 14 years as CEO of Ramsey Medical Society, which had 1,500 doctor members in Ramsey, Washington, and Dakota County. Had 25 physicians on my board, so I had my hands full. Then, if I can get this page turned, collectively, those career positions provided me with experience in insurance, government, organizational management, finance, and human resources. Serving on the board here is not a new experience for me. I have served on the boards of 6 other organizations, including Truestone Federal Credit Union, the Ham Clinic in St. Paul, and the Point of France Condominium, among others. Being a member of your board of directors here at 7500 York Cooperative has been an honor and a privilege. My record of service since I was first elected in 2022 includes serving as chairperson of the Personnel Committee, which we no longer have, but serving as vice president in 2023, serving on the Members Guide Committee, serving on the Budget Committee, and serving currently on the Policy Committee. All members of the board perform an important function as board liaison to standing committees. I have served as liaison to Membership and Marketing, to the Furnishings Committee, and currently to the Property Committee. In the past year, I've enjoyed serving as chairperson of the Ad Hoc Committee on Art at 7500 York, and as chairperson of the Ad Hoc Committee on the North Plaza, and we hope soon you'll see the results of our work on those. Both committees finished their work in the last month or so, very successfully, I would say. And I thank you for giving me the honor to serve on our board of directors. I have worked to live up to that honor by contributing to the work of the board by giving it my best effort. I will appreciate your vote to serve on the board in the 2026 election. Thank you.
I'll grab it. Oh, here, Rand, it's your turn here. Our next of the 3 candidates who offered themselves up for election is Rianne Leaf. So, Rianne, if you'll come and make a statement for us, please.
I'm going to look at that clock over there because we have been given 3 to 5 minutes. So I'll watch the clock. I'm Rianne Leaf, and I moved into 7500 York exactly 7 years ago at the end of February of 2019, in a blizzard, by the way. And that was a good time to move in because that gave me a year to get acquainted with people and programs and the 7500 York community. When I came, 3 weeks later, there was this big event called the Volunteer Fair. And since music has been a big part of my hobbies and my background, I joined the Music and Arts Committee, I joined the card recycling group, I joined the flower arranging group. I went down to see what line dancing was like on Tuesdays, played cards some evenings, and it was a very good year. And I think that when COVID came and shut everything down, we had a unique experience here, and I was impressed with how 7500 handled that challenge. For those of you who weren't here then, raise your hands. How many of you were not here in COVID? Oh my goodness, that's about half the room. And that was a time when one person was allowed on the elevator, when the dining room was closed, but you could order meals and you could stand on a little green circle outside the dining room while you waited for your meal to be delivered. You stayed in your apartment. You always wore a mask. That was an interesting year. I had a wonderful time those first 4 years doing all those kinds of activities. I ended up being the chair of the Music and Arts Committee for 3 years. I was also asked to serve on the Ad Hoc Committee for creating a fund for paying for the windows. The windows originally were going to be done about now. Isn't that right, George? Wasn't it 2026? And the board then decided to refinance the mortgage, as you know. They got a very low rate, and that paid for the windows. But that ad hoc committee decided to keep going and create the legacy fund so that 7,500 York members, their families, their friends could contribute to the building and grounds projects. I later became chair of that committee for 3 years. And then after I'd been here 4 years, I had several friends who encouraged me to consider running for the board. I gave it a lot of serious thought, and I'm so glad I did, and I'm thrilled to have been elected back then, because serving on the board, as Roger said, is a privilege. And I have found it a very, very enjoyable experience. It does take time. It is quite a bit of work. But the people on the board really do work hard to look at three things in serving as a board member. One is what is happening with the building and keeping up with the building needs. Second, looking at the budget and how are we using our money and how can we keep the annual increase to as low an amount as we can. We know it was 10.5% this year, but you don't know what the board went through to get it down to 10.5%. And I have to credit two of the hardest working people on the board, Rich Omland as chair and Dave Price as treasurer, for prompting all of us to work hard on that. On the board, I have served on the Personnel Committee. I am currently chair of the Policy Committee, and in the last 2 years, we have reviewed and updated all the old policies, 20 of them. We're now in the process of creating the new policies that don't exist for things like committees and interest groups. We're working on that one. We're creating a policy for combined units. And so there's a lot of work ahead of us. I had a professional background, had 10 years as a high school English teacher in suburban Chicago. I'm an Illinois girl. And then we moved to Minnesota because our third son was born with multiple birth defects, and he is also profoundly deaf. We didn't know that at the time and found out that the Twin Cities is a very vibrant deaf community. And so then I went to work with an organization called Pacer Center, and I was an advocate for parents of children with disabilities. I did a lot of lobbying over at the Capitol on behalf of children and their needs. And then after 5 years as that, I had a friend who convinced me that financial planning would be a good career for me. I was ready to go back to work full-time, and I became a certified financial planner. And I served for 20 years with a company that is now Ameriprise. I had as my initial clients the parents and grandparents of children with disabilities, but I expanded my client base quite a bit, gave that up after 7 years because the company asked me to be director of training, which I did, and I ended up my 20-year career on the international financial planning team for American Express. And at this point, I just say I am looking forward to serving 3 more years on the board, if you so choose, because we really do represent you, so you get the choice. Thank you.
Pass that down. The final candidate of 3 is David Price. So David, if you'll come and introduce yourself to the folks who may or may not know you.
I'm supposed to keep this to 3 minutes, so I'll do 3. Don't start counting yet. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Price, and for those of you who do know me, I am also Dave Price. I've just completed my first term on the board, and I'm running for a second term. I've lived here 4 years, coming in May. I got in here, and after a few months, somebody found me and said they needed a volunteer to help on the Christmas tea. And I thought, well, I could be a busboy, clean dishes or whatever. And next thing I know, I was promoted to recruit volunteers for the whole Christmas tree. So somehow you get thrust into leadership positions here sometimes when you don't want it, or if you do. My background, you'll see more when the bios come out with your ballots. It's pretty much in manufacturing management, also a little bit in consulting. in manufacturing. So I won't bore you with that. I want to talk about the board, though. In this age of divisive politics, it's a refreshing thing to know that your board here is not antagonistic with each other. We listen to each other. We all have different perspectives, which we value, and we learn from those different perspectives. And when the board votes, it's a result of 9 people with different backgrounds and different interests coming together and making the best decision they can on your behalf. And it's an honor to do that. And I will say that all of the people that I've served with on the board, both the current board and previous board members, are just outstanding individuals in this community. I will also say, yes, the board takes a little bit of time. What the hell, we're all retired. What else have we got but time? But it's not that much time, and I want to reassure those of you that have told me that, oh, I could never be on the board, I'm not qualified. You would be surprised. We have different backgrounds on the board members, and I think those different backgrounds are what make it a good, well-rounded body. We are here to represent you, so if you've got good judgment and good listening skills, you'd be a wonderful addition to the board. It's kind of sad that we only have 3 members this year. We had 4. She had a medical problem, so couldn't run. But we would always welcome more candidates than there are openings, because who knows what's going to happen to the 9 board members over the next 3 years. We might need a replacement. Linda, I'm not looking at you. But it's also nice to know who the people are that really want to step up and engage in things and help the community in small levels and big levels. I think there are some people on some committees that do more than board members do. I don't want people to be scared off by thinking that being on the board is an impossible task. It's not. It's a wonderful task. I look forward to running another 3 years. I'm a glutton for punishment sometimes, but it would be an honor to serve you. So thank you.
Thank you, Roger and Rianne and David. And remember what we said earlier, when you get those ballots, when they come in the next few days, be sure you mark them and get them back in, because it's the way we start to monitor and obtain a quorum for our annual meeting on the first Monday morning in May, or in May. So just a reminder to all of you to put that on your calendar as well. Monday, May 4 will be the annual meeting. Did you get I got home off the airplane, I got this. Did you guys, all of you get this? I just want to remind you, this is the Hennepin County valuation notice that came to all of us. And it's always interesting. Remember that your property taxes are paid through your dues, to the cooperative. The co-op pays all the taxes all at once, and then gives you a statement for your tax man when you're filling out your income tax. But it was interesting to take a look at how they value our unit, and then what we say that the share is worth. Remember, there's a difference in how this co-op was started. There are some cooperatives that are market rate. In other words, the co-op buy-in price will float up and down depending on how the housing market is, and it sometimes follows what the governor folks say. I'm not sure, sometimes they get things too conservative or they overvalue things. But there are other co-ops, as ours was, that was started as a limited equity cooperative. And by the bylaws, a couple of years ago, we redid the bylaws. Every year, we give to every membership, every certificate owner, a 2% increase in the value of their share. So remember, and you tell your kids this, because every now and then the folks in the office tell me when someone dies, sometimes a child or one of the people who are representing them comes in the office and says, well, wait a minute, the tax guy says this unit is worth this. Well, it doesn't matter what the Hennepin County says it's worth. The cooperative defines the value of our shares by the square footage, and when we started doing this almost 50 years ago. And we give all of us a 2% increase in our valuation every year. We're part of a limited equity cooperative. We are not a market rate cooperative. So just remember that, explain that to your kids or whoever else is monitoring your estate. That's very helpful to know. Every month I continue to think when the board gets together, this will be a pretty easy meeting. We'll be able to get out of there before noon, 1 o'clock, and maybe even have time to have lunch together or have something, get home and do that. Board meetings are not that way anymore. They're pretty much all, they take a while because there's lots of important things to do. I call it a continuing study and trying to be better at what we're about. So what I've prepared for you is I've given you a copy of the agenda page for our board meeting we just held last week, and just want to point out a few things tonight as we go through them. The first thing that you'll notice every month usually, we do something that's called a consent to action. That is when there's a matter that needs to be done between the monthly meetings. The board meets the last Wednesday of the month. If there's something important that comes up that needs to be attended to, we can do that through email votes. We have to then be 100% together on any email vote. It has to be all affirmative, 9 affirmative votes. And then we have to bring that to the next board meeting to affirm the action we took and to put it into the board minutes so that they're there. In fact, David rightly points out to me, this time we had consents to action. Is that correct? Consents because we had more than one. And we had some simple things like there was a membership for one of our new people, Nancy Ward, that had to be executed as quickly as possible, and so we did that by a consent to action. We did a revision of the Continua furniture community, items for the boardroom, by consent to action. We had already approved one last month. We were able to bring the costs back down. I always figure it's good when you're voting on something that goes down in cost rather than up. And so we were able to bring some. We're starting to put together the future of how we're going to do governance and meetings at the cooperative by upgrading the old former Stop and Shop venue into not only just a board, called a boardroom, but it'll be for all committees and subcommittees and governance committees of this community. I figure, as I said last time, there'll probably be, at least in this first few months, 100 to 150 of us who will be using that room. It's not just for the board, it's for the whole community. It's also about planning for the future. We're running lines in there, so we might even be able to do some televising of some things or whatever. So the future is ahead of us, and we're working hard at that, and so we had a continuation, consent to action for some reduction. We didn't spend all the money that we thought we were going to do. The third one that's not on your sheet because it came to us very late before the meeting was something called flushing the drains before the garage needs to be cleaned, and yes, it needs to be cleaned. What dates are the cleaning of the garage? April 28th and 30th. Just make sure you're planning ahead of time. And I walked the garage, and I've seen some cars with 2-year-old license plates that are expired and with dust an inch thick. Somehow people need to they will certainly be informed, but we need to make sure that they can get those vehicles out. That garage needs cleaning. But one of the things that needed to be attended to was the flushing of the drains. Well, we've been doing that now the last couple of years. I don't think it had been done for a long, long time. And what they found this time, and we had some money into the reserves for this, is just regular old flushing's not going to do the job. They are going to do a process called knocking, Knocking. They're going to take a machine of some kind that goes down with a camera into the drains and has to come against the corrosion and all kinds of stuff that's down there after almost 50 years that has not been knocked before. Now, how'd you like to have that job, knocking the drains? Mineral deposits. They have to come off, and so they go in there. I'm not sure how these fancy machines work, but it sounds good. I trust the property committee knows a good thing, and they passed that on to the board, and the board has passed that on. That's going to cost, to get all that done, a little over $33,000. This is a big time job. We've got about $25,000 in the reserves. We'll have to figure out, moving some budget figures around, how to take care of that. But they said simple flushing's not going to do the stuff anymore. It's kind of like thinking about all of us as we get older. It isn't a simple procedure when they go and take a look at us on the inside anymore. They got to do all kinds of stuff. So those are the kinds of things we have to deal with, and to try to plan for the future. And we're coming up against some complicated procedures. So just know that's how we can deal with that, to move it along quickly by consent to action that has to be ratified. The next thing we will do is we also, every time we hear from the treasurer. And so I've asked David, he provides a little summary sheet against the 20-some page actual finance report to give a look at where we are after the first 2 months. And I thought you'd be interested in seeing what we see every month and how it looks. So David, give us a little summary of what we're at here.
Where are we? We're right here. Okay, I put this statement, which is on the back of your program, in the board minutes each month. So for those of you that are interested, you can find the board minute packet on the portal each month. But for those of you that don't read it, this was our first 2 months of the year. And as you know, 2 months don't make much of a trend. I look at the month and then year to date. The year to date is more important. In terms of revenue, we're under budget by about 0.39%. And the vast majority of that is because of, anybody want to guess? Oh boy, I could tell you whatever I want. No, the vast majority of revenue comes from your member fees, but it's also things like garage parking fees, parking lot fees, guest room fees, etc. And the guest rooms were a little behind schedule, so that's $5,000 worth of our being under budget on revenue. But for 2 months, being less than 1% off on revenue is pretty good. In terms of expenses, year-to-date operating expenses are under budget by $90,000 or 8.5%. That's great. However, if you look below that, the year-to-date expense variances that are under budget by more than 10% were marketing. That's a pretty small budget. Housekeeping, that's a pretty small budget. And maintenance was 50% under budget, which is phenomenal. Don't expect that to continue. That's a 2 month, I wouldn't say glitch, but that's why you don't look at more than 2 months. We also do look at and see how the dining room is doing. If you look at year to date, their revenue is $717 over budget. So they're essentially right where they want to be on revenue. And thank you to all of those of you who patronize our York Room. That's what helps. However, their expenses were year-to-date $15,000 over, partly due to higher than anticipated food costs, some contract costs they had in there, and then Lord knows what else, probably heating and air conditioning for all I remember. So they're starting out a little bit in the hole. So please, please, please patronize your restaurant. That's what keeps it going and keeps us from raising the annual fee that you pay for the restaurant. By the way, we've held that for 3 years in a row. That's great. Because our expenses are low, our year-to-date operating income is over budget by $89,000. So that's great news. At the end of this table, there are just some key balances in case you're interested. We look at our cash balance, accounts receivable. Our replacement reserve is almost $5.4 million. General operating reserve is required by our mortgage company. The wait list, we don't touch that. That's strictly the wait list money, and it's held for people that want to be on the wait list. Legacy fund is invested in treasury bills, funds that stays steady, and the ground rent reserve is also required by our mortgage holder. Mortgage balance, as you can see, continues to move down slowly. It's $14.5 million. That is up for renewal in 2031. If you're really interested in the finances, this is just a highlight. I inherited this sheet from our former treasurer, Laura Lazare, and I made some modifications to it. But if you really want to drill into what drives these costs, you have to go through the whole financial package, which is, by the way, also on the portal under the board meeting minutes. Any questions? We're in good shape so far. Keep spending on the York room.
Thank you, David. David works behind the scenes like all the rest of the board members, but he's got the stuff that he has to keep track of, and I appreciate his partnership with the rest of us on the board to help us all get through that. You can read that in that board packet. It's about 24 pages long, the financial report. It's audited. Well, we're in the process of finishing the audit now, and we will have a report out as we come to the annual meeting in May about the audit for this last year. We have good auditors, and people watch very closely to what goes on. We hear from our general manager each month in a number of ways. You come to the general manager's meeting, and the executive committee works with the GM and as well as the entire board. And I just want to point out 4 things from his management report that I think are very helpful. There's a statement in and you can read all this, by the way, in the board packet every month on the portal or up in the library. There's a printed copy out. There's no secret what's in there because it's all there. But one of the things that he mentioned is he monitors members paying their dues and their membership dues on time. And the statement was, except for a few exceptions. And someone asked, well, Mitch, what does that mean? And why would you say that? Well, apparently here, for a long time, we've had a history of some folks. It's been a little bit of loosey-goosiness about people paying their membership dues on time. And so that was just, we understand there are exceptions. You can always come down and visit with Mitch, visit with Jake, and talk a bit about that. But we imposed, as a board, decided there should be a penalty for people who do that. And by the way, you know what? After that penalty was imposed, we haven't had any problems. Now, how do you like that? James Madison in the Federalist Papers is right. If men and women were angels, we wouldn't need constitutions and penalties, right? But they're not. And so people had a habit of not paying, and they paid, we went out a long time, and they, we simply can't, you who own this business together with all the rest of us, we can't have that. So people need to be able to pay on time. So that was an interesting comment. Penalties do work. That leads me to the HO6 matter, which is if none of you have ever rented before, we always used to, as a young couple, we had a renter's policy where you had to have some kind of policy to cover your insurance when you came here. And in the co-op world, it's an HO6 policy. And the board, or not the board, all the members, when we redid the bylaws, approved the matter that requires people who are members here to have HO6 policies with some minimum amounts of coverage. The bottom line is the co-ops, what do you call the first part, or the deductible, is pretty high. Just think how tough insurance costs are. So we count on all of us who are members to have that HO6 policy to cushion that first $25,000. Now, if somebody doesn't have that, and lo and behold, they should not be able to pay because they're insolvent, what does that mean? That means all of us, including you and you, will pay for that person being insolvent. That's why we demand that people have an HO6 policy, to make sure they're covered and you're covered by somebody's mistake. We're going to send a letter out to just a very few folks who have not complied. Now, this is an interesting time because it's complicated. We're helping a nice lady with her TV remote. She doesn't know how to run the concept of a television remote. And it's no wonder why some folks can't figure out what is a HO6. It's complicated. But somehow we have to help people, and the board is going to do some visiting with folks to help them understand how important this is and ask them to be in compliance. There's going to be a letter going out this week to very few. We're getting more and more. Now, as you heard Mitch say at the last meeting here of the managers' meeting, it's a complicated world because everybody's insurance policies comes due at a different time. So we all have to just practice. Every year when you get your big stack of papers from the insurance guy, take a copy of the one thing that is all the fees or what you have on, and you bring it down to the office once a year. Discipline, yes. A pain, probably. But we got to do it anyway. Because if you don't, we're actually, if somebody refuses to have coverage and something happens in their unit, you're going to pay. I'm going to pay. And that we will not, none of us want that, right? So we're going to encourage that. Last month I talked to you about the Hennepin County surface easement for 191 square feet out here. Guess what? Hennepin County, the National Cooperative Bank, through Fannie Mae, and the lawyers keep talking to one another over $6,000 worth of an easement. We're not done yet. And the worst part is it just takes each time up for our staff. So they'll get there. We're going to get our money. We're going to get reimbursed. Plus, even what they quoted, we negotiated a little higher fee, and they tell us they're going to pay our legal fees as well. But it's just the time. Just think of the time that it takes Mitch and to go through, and Michael to look at that all the time, listening to lawyers and bankers and other people talk to one another. That's the kind of stuff we get to have fun with at the board meeting, but just know that's in the works. Finally, I want to commend everybody. When we had the big snowstorm, everybody did great. You had plenty. This was good. We learned, I think, from the first time to get that communication out quickly and get all those automobiles moved, and we were able to move that snow very quickly. So thanks to all of you who have vehicles outside and got that done so that we could get the parking lots cleaned up. Let us hope we have spent the last money on snow removal this spring. However, I will not guarantee that. Hey, I've seen it blow pretty heavy in May. You never know what we're going to get. But just appreciate that for the cooperation people have made. We do every month legal work on behalf of our members. The key issue is, how does one hold membership in the cooperative? How do you hold your member? Who's on the title of your membership certificate? When you come here for the very first time, a trust cannot be you. People who are in your will cannot be you. You have to join this place as a person, as an individual person. Once you've joined, then you're able to, through a process, to designate how you want to have your membership certificate read, to put it in your revocable or irrevocable trust, to give it as a payable on death to members of your family or too close. But you gotta get that done by legal means, and we have to vote on that as a board. And so we tend to that every month and it's surprising how many people continue to work through that process. That's an important thing. So now when we're asking you for one time to get down and take a picture of your membership certificate, this is a win. It's not just really a pain, it's a win, because you can look at your certificate and see how it's titled. Is it the way you want it to be titled, and are the beneficiaries on there correctly? So you will have an opportunity. So get that thing out, get it done, take a copy or have them do a copy for you down at the office. That's an important thing. It'll go in our file. We have not had any records before. I continue to be amazed at the work of reorganizing all the stuff over the years that has not been well attended to, and that we're cleaning those up. So far better records, maintenance of what we're doing all through the system. So just a note about that. I want to thank George and the Property Committee. The Property Committee is, I was going to say, they're not the hardest working people in show business, but they're the hardest working people around here. They have worked again and again on so many important issues and continue to. They are a great hard-working team, and I want to just lift them up and tell you how important that is. We had a request from the Property Committee. They didn't have as many people they had hoped to get. They had nobody left in the bullpen, and so they asked, or one of the members asked, if we could allow that person to move to have a second standing committee position. And since there was nobody in the queue for the Property Committee, we authorized that. One of our other committees, the Finance Committee, or not the Giving Committee, had more than one persons in their queue, but there was a request to grant an exception. The board worked that through. We really struggled with that issue, and we denied their request to have somebody serve on two standing committees because they had people waiting in line who were willing to serve. Now, I will, in a note to them, say it doesn't mean they have to choose those people, but we're not going to allow the exception for them as we allowed for the Property Committee, because the Property Committee had nobody waiting in line. So the board has looked hard at this idea of people serving on more than two or on one standing committee. I think we'd prefer not, but there are good reasons to have to extend things when it's time. That was an interesting decision. We hemmed and hawed and worked really hard about it. We did not come to blows about that, though. That was pretty good. But we had good give and take. When the decision is made, it's the decision of the board, and that's how we approach that matter. I say that because the RAC committee for chairs and secretaries is coming up for standing committees and subcommittees and all kinds of folks. The key issue around here all the time will be leadership of all these different communities. People have to take that seriously and do good work. There has to be a good set of minutes for everybody's committee and standing committee and subcommittees. That's the hardest part. I know, I understand that. People go to meetings and they say, who would serve as secretary? Nobody raises their hand, right? It's hard, isn't it? It's difficult, but there's going to be a good training coming up here. Watch the calendar and watch the announcements for the RAC training for committees and subcommittees and all the rest of the places that will go on here. One of the things we did, because we have a brand new committee like we did a year ago, we had the Giving Committee, the ArtCom Committee that came out of the Ad Hoc Committee on Art. They have a number of people volunteered to be on that committee, and there was nobody to affirm those folks, so the board of directors took it upon, well, that's our job. When there's no other community that would give authority, we took that committee under our wing, and we approved the members who had signed up to be on that committee. And we've appointed Roger Johnson, who chaired the Ad Hoc Committee on Art, to convene that group of new committee members to make sure there's a good election. Roger will make sure that's done correctly. There's a good election, that we parcel out the terms of service over the 3-year period and decide on those things like all the rest of the committees have done. So that's what we've been doing. Rianne indicated, how many policies did we work through this year, or over these last 2 years? 20 policies, and we've got more to come. Why do we have more to come? Over the years, members continued to push the boundaries of what the bylaws say and what good working conditions and order is for the community. So every time, it's always difficult to try to figure out how we're going to handle that. But one of the things we realize, we've got a lot of stuff in this community where we've made no public statements. And so we continue to work at that to try to be as transparent as we can so everybody understands the rules. Again, we're going back to Madison. If people were angels, we would need rules, and we would need regulations, but we're not. So we work hard on that to look at those policies for the good of all of us. The final item I want to just share with you tonight, and it's one we worked through with Mitch at this last meeting, was a white paper he did about the turnover process. Turnover replacements, refurbishing, and renovations. It has been an interesting community here over the years. We've not had good set in order policies as pertains to all this turnover situation. That's one of the things that has changed dramatically over the years in management of senior cooperatives. We've got, our staff has turned into almost small construction company management, because there's a lot of this stuff that continues to go on. There's some really good things that have been going on, but there's some things that we really need to regularize. And so we're working with management about that. We're continuing to go over that. We think with what we've done to the budget the last couple of years, we put some money into the general fund for refurbishing, and then started to, in the reserves, to keep some, we finally got the funding to bring the whole place up into good shape. We'll come back to you when we get ready to look at that again, but we're just starting the talk and the dialogue. Part of the things to serve on the board is to help make decisions for the future and how we're going to manage the community, because it's terribly important how we go about that. So all of a sudden, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon after starting a little before 8 that morning, and it was time to go into another session where we do executive sessions where we have to deal with matters that are not public, that pertain to staffing and members and those kinds of things. So I give kudos to my colleagues who work hard at this last board meeting. We will not, in April, since the April board meeting is way at the end of the month, the Sunday night after the board meeting would be the Sunday night before Monday morning when we have the annual meeting. So we will not have a board report at the end of April, but you'll get the big report on Monday morning, the 4th of May, when you come for the annual meeting. That's all I have. Questions and comments? Guys, could you man the mics out here if people want to speak or work? Let us know something or give us some ideas or some brilliant thoughts. Here, Don, you mind running one around too, and we'll.
It's your turn.
Got a question over here.
All right. And I asked the board we'll chime in together to see if we could answer. Yep.
So, Rich, when you were talking about the H06,
Yep.
could you just say that again? What you were talking about?
The H06 is like when you were college kids and first got married, it's your renter's insurance. And everybody has to have a policy. And we have people who do not have policies or have not, and you have to show the office that you're covered. Because if you're not covered and you have a fire and you cause a mess and you can't pay, we're all going to pay. That's why we ask everybody here to have an H06 policy, to cover so you don't have to pay for their mistake. Everybody understand that? You're an owner here. Well, it's not the board is going to just eat it. It's all of us are going to eat it if somebody doesn't have coverage. All right? Thank you. It's a good question because it's hard. Like I said, I have a lovely neighbor a few stairs up who can't seem to figure out how to turn the channels. So to get an H06 policy is complicated. So if you got neighbors around, talk to them. Help your neighbor. See how you can reach out and encourage them. Annie's got some good lists down in her office of companies that other people, that you folks recommended. You got a great agent, you got a great company, let Annie know, and then she can tell people if there's what they should do. But help your neighbor. You know, when they just can't, some folks can't fathom what a policy. They have no idea. They've never attended to that in their whole life. I understand that. So, Nikki, there's over here. Linda, here's a question over here.
She's asleep at the wheel.
Oh, she's having fun talking to Ken back there. See?
In the case of your neighbor who you have helped, wouldn't it make more sense to contact a family member who's taking care of her affairs to explain the H06 to?
We're going to do that. We're going to make sure the families are in those. Yes.
You're not going to get a good result from that resident.
No, we have a savvy. We understand that. Yes.
Another suggestion, I don't know if the marketing committee does that, but when new members move in, can you not require that they do automatic deposit of their monthly dues?
In fact, we do require that of their dues. We do require automatic and using then the ACH feature, right? That's that automatic withdrawal, yes. And that's how we've learned to avoid the problems of people not paying. And it really is working well. So thank you, everybody, for cooperating. I know people said, I read a checklist, but I'm not going to. Well, if everybody did that, what a mess we have. So.
If you require that, can't you require the insurance declaration page also at the time they sign up?
Say that again, Eva.
When you're closing
When
on
you're
your
closing,
unit, they should provide that declarations page because they have to pay for it.
That's true.
By that
coming
date.
in, yeah, they got to get it. So they should. I think they're told, but it's like when I moved in. You remember how big that pile was? I was overwhelmed. But so we just have to remind people again and again. Well, that's right. That's why I said the problem is every year you got to renew it. And every year you got to bring your sheet down, take a picture. Yes, it is. Yep. George?
4 to 5 years ago, Rich and I were talking, and I asked him a question. And the first 2 words in his response were, "Oh, George." Now, you'll know Rich is a former clergyman, and he's heard many confessions. It turns out this wasn't a confession, though I have many sins. But I asked Rich if he would consider becoming the vice president of our co-op the next year. And he thought about it and agreed to do it, knowing what that could lead to. He's been our president now for a few years, and this is Rich's last board report. And he has said that he will stay on the board but not be our president next year. So I thought Rich, you've done a marvelous job. Thank you. Could we all thank Rich?
I'll toot George's horn at the annual meeting. Thank you, George. I appreciate that, Sabrina. It has been an honor, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. And I thank all of you. And that Dave, now that reminds us, next year when it comes to the election, this year was so interesting that all three of the people whose first term have come to an end all offered themselves to move forward for another 3-year term. Next year, at least, this guy's term comes to an end. I'm done with my 6 years. So next year, there'll be an open seat on the board. So we're going to have a lot of candidates, hopefully, to run. So continue to talk with us. We're happy to visit with you and encourage you to think about helping out and offering yourself in that way. As what the board will do after the annual meeting is we will meet a few days afterwards and we will elect officers. We do that every year. Officers are elected 1 year at a time, and then we'll go on and have a brand new group, and they'll do just fine as well. So Nan is here tonight. I saw her. Nan served. Thank you for your service, Nan. George and I. Who else is left? Bill Rosen is still here and kicking. And were you chair of the board? 6 years. Well, you were there 6 years. Way to go, hey. And she's still running the place downstairs, right? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. For those of you who participate, a blessed Holy Week to you, and all the rest. Had a great time for Easter coming and whatever. See you later. Take care.
I never did talk to George.
Thank you, guys. That was a great one. You guys all did great.
I was going to second George's motion, but you didn't look at me. Amen.
Once there was a situation like that, our college president was ill and was hospitalized. And the dean came to him and said, Mr. President, he said, we had a faculty meeting this afternoon. And the faculty voted to wish you a speedy recovery.
That's great.
So they voted 51 to 49.
I bought an apple.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Well, you know, we've been in the Detroit, Denver airport a couple of times. To find the train. Well, I've been in the Atlanta airport too.
I've not been through that very much. Is it like that?
Yeah,
It's
like
crazy.
Oh, wow.
And it was crazy that morning.
I can do that.
It was crazy out here.
Yeah. Thank you. There you go.